All right, what's up? What's happening? What it do, baby? We are back with another edition of the Why Not Us, Why Not Now podcast. It's the one and only Xavier McKnight, aka X, aka Zay, joined by my partner in crime, Kory Blackshear. Y'all know him as KB. KB, what's up, bro? How's your week going, man?
Man, tiring, but we still getting to it, man. Ready to get this content going.
Yes, sir. For those who don't know, KB is a football coach as well, and he was telling me that the team won a game 26-0 earlier this week. Congrats to him and the squad on going out there and handling business. All right, and speaking of folks who are handling business, man, before we get into the NFL, got to give a special shout out to the USF Bulls, man. Going into Florida, going into the swamp, Ben Hill Griffin Stadium, upsetting the Gators. The Gators coming in ranked 13th. At the end of things, USF walking away with an 18-16 victory. They weren't ranked going in. They're ranked number 18 now. The Gators are number nothing right now in the nation. They're not in the top 25. And Billy Napier, man, it is a very real possibility that after they face LSU up this upcoming Saturday, that could very well be the final time we see him coaching the Gators.
Yeah, I'm looking at the South Florida team, and I'm gonna venture out to say that game was more about South Florida than it was about the downfall of Florida. I think that South Florida, they showed it against Boise State. And then they go on the road and they show it again in a tough environment in the swamp, and they came out with a victory. And you could see how pumped the coaches were afterwards. Like that lets you know how much that win meant to that program. So I think that South Florida, they're showing they belong.
Yeah, man. And I live here in the Suncoast Tampa Bay area of Southwest Florida. I can tell you, like, the following that these fans for USF that they have, it's real. Like, it was a gigantic win for the program, something huge for the team, something huge for the fan base, something huge for the school and the community as a whole. But they go into Miami this week. Tough task, but we said it was a tough task last week. The Canes, man, they look like they're the real deal with Carson Beck back there, having two back-to-back years of legit quarterback play with Cam Ward last year, going as the number one overall pick in this year's NFL draft. And now they've got Carson Beck coming over as a transfer from my very own UGA Bulldogs, and looks like he's having a resurgence there. It's definitely going to be a game to watch on Saturday. And not to take anything away from USF in any way whatsoever, because you're right, it was more so about USF than it was about the Gators' downfall. But the Gators didn't help things. They had a player who had a personal foul penalty and was disqualified from the game for, dare I say, spitting on somebody. Man, this appears to be a new trend in the game, and I just got to say it. We got to go ahead and we got to get that out of the way right now. Like, there is no place in the game or society for that. And I got to tell you, KB, I heard Shannon Sharp say on his Nightcap podcast a couple of days ago, if you spit on somebody, whatever they do to you afterwards, I'm cool with it. And I got to say, man, I got to echo those same sentiments, because it's just some things that you just don't do.
I say this as a man, you can punch me, but whatever you do, if you spit on me, first of all, that's disgusting. Second of all, it shows a lack of respect. And you in a gladiator sport as it already stands, and so for someone to go out their way and spit on you, that just shows a lack of class, lack of discipline. And honestly, you're right. There is no room in the game for it. Like, honestly, and we've been seeing the trend now for a couple of different reasons, different players. So I'm with you.
But maybe that young man got some inspiration from something he saw a few nights before Florida and USF took the field in Gainesville. And that would be the Battle of Spitgate that kicked off Thursday night football. In particular, Mr. Jalen Carter of the Philadelphia Eagles. Now, I want to preface this by saying that we learned later in the game that Dak Prescott actually spit first. However, what remains unknown is if Dak Prescott spit at or towards Jalen Carter, or if he was spitting on the ground. What I do know is that we did see Dak wink at Jalen Carter, and we also saw him say something too. He muttered something. I don't know what it was, I'm not going to get into the details of that. But what we did see blatantly on camera, Jalen Carter walked up in Dak's face and he spit on him. And that led to him being disqualified before a single snap of that game was played. The floor is yours, my brother. I'm going to let you take this before I do.
Yeah, so Jalen Carter, I say he, regardless of the outcome of the game, he let his team down because his presence in that middle, it does make you adjust your game, regardless of anything that you run. He is a force to be reckoned with. Now, like I said, his rep has always been immensely talented, but the character questions come into play once you see stuff like this. And honestly, it was selfish. Regardless of who does what first, it's always the last guy that gets caught. So for me, you're too valuable to your team to let your team down in a, first of all, home opener, ring night, and then also you're going against a tough divisional opponent. Like, it's just no need for that. And honestly, him getting the 1-game suspension honestly was, I think he got away pretty lightly. If you ask me, 50,000, I think it was 54,000. He honestly got, a pretty light slap on the wrist, if you ask me.
I would have to agree with you there 100%. I definitely thought he would get multiple games for that. I want to give a shout out to Dak Prescott for showing the restraint that he showed in that moment. I definitely thought his linemen would have stepped up and would have done something about it in that moment, but everybody kept their cool in their moment. And I mean, I guess maybe it's because they saw that the referee was standing right there. He saw it. KB, I don't know if you saw the look on the ref's face when that happened, but he was just like, come on, man. Like, instantly just threw the flag. It was like, now, you can't do that. And yeah, like you said, there have been character issues with Jalen Carter dating back to his days at UGA. So there are just some things that you can't do. He's not helping his case in any way whatsoever. My hope for him is that he learns from this and that he knows that this is not okay and that he learns to control his temperament better than this. Because not only does your team need you, but your family needs you to be out there too. I can imagine he's more than likely the breadwinner in his family right now with everything that he's doing in the NFL. But just for the sake of his own future, because he's got a bright future in the NFL. But I don't want to see him ending up becoming the case of some other players that we've seen. And I don't want to name any players right now who come to the top of my head because one of the ones that I'm thinking of, Jalen Carter hasn't done anything to that level yet to what we know about, so I'm not going to go there. But come on, man, clean this stuff up. Take it all out on the field. Do what you got to do. Be out there to help your team win because the Dallas Cowboys played pretty well in that game on all sides of the ball, but especially on offense. I was very impressed with what I saw by Dak Prescott. His receivers let him down, preferably CeeDee Lamb. But I'm not going to go too hard on CD right here because he's still a great receiver in the game no matter what. He's a top 5 guy. Just had a bad day at the office. It happens. I'm pretty sure he's going to clean it up against the New York Giants this upcoming weekend. The New York Giants got enough problems to worry about anyway because if you watch that game on Sunday, that offense was absolutely putrid. Russell Wilson, he's on the back 9. They have no offensive line. And Brian Daboll, man, I don't know how much longer he's going to be the head coach of the New York Giants. That stuff on the sideline between him and Malik Neighbors, that doesn't favor well for Brian Daboll because usually organizations take the coach's side over the player, but Brian Daboll was already on the hot seat coming into this year anyway, so that definitely didn't help things. But I was impressed with what I saw from the Dallas Cowboys in that game last Thursday, but I do have to wonder if Jalen Carter was out there on the field, would things have been different? I have to legit question that because the Eagles didn't have that force up the middle that really was applying that pressure to the Cowboys' offensive line. I want to give a shout out to the Cowboys' offensive line too because they went out there and they did their job. But I just don't know if Jalen Carter eliminating himself from the contest, if that may have played a role into why pressure was not being generated the way that we expected it to be going into the matchup.
Yeah, I mean, I look at it a couple of ways. Like, it is tough to say whether he would have affected the certain drives or not. I do think that with some of the departures that they had in the offseason, that also played a part into them getting exposed a little bit. But like you said, let's give some credit to the Cowboys. That offensive performance was honestly, it shocked me. That Prescott, he looked composed. You know, like you said, I'm not gonna go hard on CD because CD, honestly, when he's on, he's on. He's top. I say top five, but honestly, he could be anywhere on his best day, top three. That's how good he is. That's how talented he is. Now, they're going to, have some games where they're going to be struggling for offense. That's just the nature of the game. Um, they're going to have to, really see what they have. They had got, a good contribution from Javonte Williams, who had 2 touchdowns that night. Maybe Jalen Carter could have possibly, I don't know, maybe prevented something on the ground because his run defense it was missed. It was missed definitely. Like they were getting gashed up and down the field, and if it hadn't been for a few lapses on the Cowboys' offensive side, we might be talking about the Cowboys coming out of victorious, and we looking at the Eagles like not a good look. Not a good look for Jalen Carter. Not a good look for the Eagles' defense. And so, yeah, I'm looking at it like I think both teams will be fine. But I do look at Jalen Carter like this is kind of one of those things you need a wake up call. Like now. Like not like his coach has to let him know like we can't continue to talk to you about these same things.
And I want to show some love to the Philadelphia Eagles too, because we've been talking all Cowboys in this one. Jalen Hurts, man, no matter what you might think about the numbers, the stats, that dude is a baller. That dude is a winner. He just does what it takes to get it done. And we've been seeing that since his Alabama days. We saw it at Oklahoma, and we've been seeing it throughout his entire tenure at Philadelphia. If it's not for him, they don't win that game. But something's going on in that receiving room, KB. I'm just going to pose the question like this. How much longer do you think A.J. Brown is going to be a Philadelphia Eagle?
That's tough to say because he really wasn't involved in the offense the other night. And really, when you have Jalen Hurts and you have Saquon Barkley, you're going to be a run-heavy team with an occasional passes, going here and there to Dallas Goedert, A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith. Now, tough part about the job is even when you're winning, everyone's not happy. A.J. Brown, of course, being the receiver that he is, he wants the ball. Anybody does. In his position, I think that he needs to ignore everything right now, but I don't know exactly if I can give an exact timetable on how long he's a Philadelphia Eagle. It just depends on how things progress over time.
I hear you on all of that, but when Jahan Dotson is able to play a bigger role in the offense to A.J. Brown, it's something that's going on in that room, in that locker room right now. To make it clear for everybody, A.J. Brown had one reception on only one target that came late in the fourth quarter. Now, it was a pivotal play that they made because it was one that helped them get closer to a first down that ultimately helped Philadelphia be able to get in victory formation to run out the clock the rest of the way to officially seal that victory over Dallas. But I was legit wondering, KB, while I was watching that game, and I am not joking, but I'm not saying this to be funny. I was legit wondering, yo, is A.J. Brown even out here on the field? Because that's how quiet it was with him in the game. So I hear you when you say there's not really a timetable that you want to give on it. I'll go ahead and give one. I'm going to give it to the trade deadline because unless something drastically changes in there or we see him ending up becoming a bigger part of the offense, man, this is something. And, maybe it isn't a story, but something usually is always something. So we're going to have to see how that progresses. But one team that very well could be in play for his services would be the Kansas City Chiefs. Because my goodness, last Friday when they went to Brazil and they took on the Los Angeles Chargers, man, if it wasn't for Patrick Mahomes, I don't know where that offense would be.
Yeah, definitely. Pat Mahomes had his cape on that night. He carried that offense. Couple things to note. Obviously, the Xavier Worthy injury looming large at this moment because with the suspension of Rashee Rice, now you're down to your number one and number two receiver. And with Travis Kelce not being the Travis Kelce of old, now who's going to step into that role? I'm looking at guys like Marquise Brown, Hollywood Brown. he's going to have to play an expanded role now, being thrust into that spotlight. I also look at guys like Juju Smith-Schuster. How are you going to help that offense? And any contributions that Pat Mahomes can get, obviously, will be welcome. But I don't really know where they go from here, because if he's sidelined for an extensive period of time, how long can you hold off in that AFC West that has teams like Denver that's loaded? That defense is legit. If you looked at Sunday, that defense is a legit top 3 defense. The Chargers, I saw good things from them. They're reloaded this year. So how long can you hold off with the weapons that you do currently have? That's my question.
So to bring some context to this for everybody, Hollywood Brown had a spectacular game for Kansas City in that game. 10 catches for 99 yards on 16 targets. Juju was a factor with 5 catches for 55 yards. Travis Kelce, 2 catches, 47 yards. One was a tutty. But my bigger concern, honestly, besides the receiving room, KB, honestly, is the running back room. Patrick Mahomes led this team in rushing with 6 carries for 57 yards. First of all, how many times do you usually say that Patrick Mahomes is leading the team in rushing at anything? It's very rare that you say that. The next best rusher after that, Isaiah Pacheco, 5 carries, 25 yards. Kareem Hunt, 5 yards, 5 carries for 16 yards. You can't do anything with that.
Yeah, they're not really explosive on the ground, and I think that's going to hurt them long term, because if Pat Mahomes has to put that superhero effort in every single game, where is your ceiling at that point? We're looking at the wide receiver room, and like you said, the running back room, it deserves to be questioned, because you're not the output. I don't see this just being a one-off. I think this is something that they're going to be looking at consistently. I don't see Pacheco, Kareem Hunt. I don't see the running back by committee thing working in their favor, just because they don't have enough explosiveness coming out of that backfield. But we'll see where they go from here, as far as with the injuries and as far as trying to establish more of a run game. But it's not looking too good for Kansas City right now.
And they've got Philadelphia coming up here in week 2, so things don't get easier. And they just traded for running back Tank Bigsby from the Jacksonville Jaguars to go in the same backfield with Saquon Barkley. So the rich just continue to get richer in terms of that. You would think that a team like Kansas City would be trying to make a move like that, because all they gave up in return for Tank Bigsby was a 6th-round draft pick. Kansas City definitely could have made a move like that. I'm questioning, hey, Brett Veach, what is going on? You're known as one of the best general managers in the sport. Why have you not been able to get this running back position correct? It started with Clyde Edwards-Helaire, then Isaiah Pacheco, and those guys showed some promise in their first years, but it didn't build a consistency over time. And now it's starting to become a bit of a problem. And I know that they're very top-heavy in terms of contracts with Pat Mahomes, Travis Kelce, Chris Jones. It should be noticed that Pat Mahomes has been restructuring his contract every single year for the past few years, so that they can try to have some type of flexibility to be able to add what it is that they need. But let's show some love to the Chargers, because they went out there and they handled business, winning 27-21. That might have been the best game that I've seen Justin Herbert play.
Yeah, Justin Herbert, he silenced a lot of doubters. I'm not going to say completely, because, with the playoff woes, that's still going to loom over his head. But he silenced a lot of doubters. He looked composed. He looked prepared. He looked like he was dialed in from the get. He got his receivers involved with Quentin Johnston having one of his best games of his career. Like, he was just dialed in as well. So you look at guys like that, offense is going to be scary this year. You had contributions like Amari Hampton, big physical back who knows how to run behind his pads. You got Keenan Allen out there contributing, Ladd McConkey contributing. So I'm looking at the Chargers like this is a sleeper team. And honestly, Justin Herbert could possibly be a sleeper MVP. If he can put it together and that defense continues to play up to their standards, I think that they can make a run in the AFC West.
Yeah, it appears I might have been wrong about the Los Angeles Chargers, but we still got 16 more games to go, because CKB, I don't think I discussed it with you. After Rashawn Slater went down with that injury during the preseason, I just thought, okay, that's a piece of their offensive line they couldn't afford to lose. So I had them falling all the way to 8-9, but maybe they're going to end up being better than that. So if I'm wrong on that, and my bad to the Chargers. Another game we got to talk about. I know this one isn't your favorite, but we got to talk about the Atlanta Falcons and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. But I want to focus on the positives. We don't have to pile on for what happened at the end of the game. It is what it is. And if changes need to be made, we expect that changes will be made. We saw the San Francisco 49ers do that with their kicker. We'll see if the Falcons end up having to do the same with theirs. But there are such things as good losses. And I would say that this was actually a good loss for the Falcons. And I say that because Michael Penix Jr. appears to be the real deal. I think the Falcons finally got their next quarterback for the next decade, the guy that they've been searching for since Matt Ryan left that building.
Yeah, Penix, he was locked in. He from the beginning of the game, you could just see like this is what we needed. This is what we need to see. This is what a full offseason looks like. A guy finally getting to come in, have all these weapons, and he still has some coming on the way. A lot of people forget Darnell Mooney did not play in that game. Drake London still a little banged up, still questionable to play, but I like what he did. I think he got a lot of people involved on that offense. Bijan catching over 100 yards for the Falcons. You also look at guys like Ray McLeod, who was involved heavily. You look at guys like Kyle Pitts. This could be a resurgent year for Kyle Pitts. So we're looking at that Falcons team like, yeah, it was a bad loss, but you do have certain things that you can take away from that game. And I will say that we might have found something with this Michael Penix guy. He's legit. He's a gamer.
And I also want to give some love to the Falcons defense too, man, because outside of that last drive where Baker just went down the field on them, they played pretty well out there, really applying that pressure. I saw a pass rush threat. That's something I haven't been able to see for the past few years when it comes to this team. I saw a pass rush threat from the Falcons throughout the course of most of the 60 minutes of that game. But Baker Mayfield, Tampa Bay Buccaneers, that offense, we knew they were loaded coming in. And, man, Emeka Egbuka, man, he looks like he's going to be the real deal. It looks like they finally have the heir apparent to Mike Evans. And that's no disrespect to Chris Godwin or Jalen McMillan, but something about Egbuka just feels different. How do you feel about that?
Yeah, man, he looked like a seasoned vet out there. He was getting behind coverages. He was making plays that I haven't seen rookies make in a long time. Honestly, Baker played well. That final drive, it took a lot because with one time out to start that drive, Falcons had their opportunities to close that game. And Baker, he stayed in there. One of the things that Baker did really well that I will point out, his mobility on the ground. When things weren't available downfield, he was fine just taking it and tucking it and running. He would get a few yards here and there, and over the time the course of the game, those things add up. The Falcons, they did have some type of pass rush. I will say that. Still a few things that I would have to clean up as far as mobile quarterbacks go. Anytime you have these mobile quarterbacks, it best to probably put a spy on that quarterback if he's going to continue to take off, because especially with some of the guys that they got coming up on this schedule, I would look at, possibly, putting that spy in or, increasing that pass rush, dialing up a few more blitz. But so far, so good. I like what I saw. James Pierce Jr., I like it. Both of my rookies in the backfield, in the secondary, Watts, Bowman, those guys played well. So as far as, what I saw as a fan, I can say that, things look promising for the future.
And Caden Ellis is a dog, man. My goodness, he was all over the field. I knew Jesse Bates was the best player on that defense overall, but he's giving him a fair run to come in at 1A, 1B. He is a dog, to say the least. So, yeah, the Falcons, man, they got some good things coming up here in the future. hopefully Darnell Mooney can get healthy and he can prove to be that team's number 2 receiver, because it did feel like at times on Sunday they were force feeding Drake London the football. You never want to be in a position where you feel like you're force feeding one guy, because Tampa does have the personnel and other teams do, including the team they're playing on Sunday Night Football here in week 2, the Minnesota Vikings and Brian Flores. Good Lord, who knows what he's going to dial up for Penix in that offense. But I really like what I saw from them. I'm optimistic about their future going forward. And it's going to be a battle, man, between them and Tampa Bay for this division. And I have to say it like that because it appears that I was wrong about the Carolina Panthers being a threat. What I saw on Sunday was absolutely atrocious. And until I see better from Bryce Young, I will not be singing his praises. I won't be downing him, but I also won't be singing his praises. And at some point, either you are or you're not. And I know that there was a big extended weather delay in Jacksonville on Sunday, but it rains all the time in the Carolinas. It rains all the time here in Florida. Now, it's not like the Carolina Panthers are from some area where they're not really used to getting much precipitation. No, it rains all the time in the Carolinas just like it does in Florida. Like, there is no excuse for that offense to look the way that it did, especially with the weapons that they have. So it appears that this division is going to come down to Tampa and Atlanta once again. Man, let's break it down really quickly about the top 2 picks going into Jacksonville. Travis Hunter came in looking different for the game from the start. He cut the dreads and went down to a low-cut fade, presenting a whole brand new look, got his first touches in the NFL. KB, what did you think about what you saw from Travis Hunter on Sunday?
Like it, I think he's still adjusting to his role. You know, we haven't seen a guy play both sides of the ball in a long time. And who knows when the next time we'll see it again. I think that he's only going to get better. I think he's only going to just, nestle himself into that offense. He's still going to be a complimentary guy right now as far as that offense goes, because you still have guys like Brian Thomas Jr., ETN, who had a great game, and Trevor Lawrence, he has a lot of weapons now at his disposal. I look at Travis Hunter like this is going to be a year where, he's going to go through his growing pains. That's normal for a rookie, but especially for a guy who's playing both sides of the ball. It's not easy to go out there and get checked by a number 1 or number 2 corner and then go out there and check the number 1 and number 2 guy. So for me, I think that I would grade it about a B. It's not bad for his first game, and I think that, like I said, the potential is there. The talent is definitely there. The athleticism is there. So, there's a lot of good things to like about Travis Hunter.
I'm gonna go with a B too. Also, just the fact that he's bringing renewed energy, renewed confidence to that locker room, coming off the Heisman Trophy that he won last season. So it's honestly a burst of what's needed in that locker room. Probably a place that's been down for the past couple of seasons. I was pretty impressed with what I saw from Jacksonville overall, to be quite honest with you. And they play in a wide open division, so I'm going to be pretty curious to see what's going to happen throughout the course of the season, because after what we saw from the Texans on Sunday, man, I just don't know what to say right now. I know the Rams have a good defense, but 9 points in today's NFL? Come on, man, you got to do a little better than that. The Indianapolis Colts, they look very impressive with what they did on Sunday, but I don't want to necessarily read too much into that because they played the lowly Miami Dolphins, who I'm going to go ahead and go out on a limb right now and say that's probably going to be the worst team in the NFL this year. They couldn't do anything right out there. They got all types of issues in the locker room right now. Clearly, Tyreek Hill, Tua Tagovailoa, Mike McDaniels already looks like he's lost the team, and we are not even a quarter of the way through. That's just a bad situation all the way down there. We'll see what Tennessee is able to do. Cam Ward took the field on Sunday for his first regular season NFL game against the Denver Broncos. And considering the fact that they are a sea of orange on defense, where you take 1 second and then there's somebody right there in your face, I thought that he actually performed pretty well out there. Now, there were some things that he could have done better in terms of not backing up too much and losing yardage, but I don't know if he has the right head coach going forward to who he's going to have with as he goes into the future in Nashville with the Tennessee Titans. And I definitely know that he doesn't have the personnel on the field with him that he needs going forward with the Tennessee Titans.
Yeah, I actually was impressed by Cam Ward. This is probably the toughest defense that he may see all year. That Broncos defense, when I say that there are very little weaknesses within that defense, they can cover, they can get to the quarterback. That team, I mean, honestly, I'm impressed because it was a couple of plays where I saw Cam Ward drop back, and honestly, he hit guys in stride, in the hands, and they dropped it. Calvin really had a couple. I just look at like for you to come out on your first game, first NFL game, and you go on the road to Denver, which is not an easy place to play in itself with the altitude. It's kind of, for me, I won't take anything away from him. That was impressive for me. If that's something that's my franchise guy going forward, I just like to see that he can compete. He didn't give in. He battled all the way to the end. And like you said, personnel is going to come into question because I don't think he has the talent around him to compete. Honestly, in that division, I'm just going to be completely honest. I think that the head coach, he may just be a placeholder. Honestly, I don't see them winning. I see 4 games, 5 games max as far as for their ceiling for the season. So I'm looking at Cam Ward as this first year, just build, 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 continue to battle, hone your skills, and see where everything can take you next year.
So you believe he's in the type of situation that you would say that Peyton Manning was in his rookie year?
I won't go that far only because I think that they had a better organization around him. I think that Peyton Manning was more he was more for me. I think that they didn't give up on him because even with all the high interception numbers that Peyton Manning had in his rookie year, I think that he had a better organization that was going to surround him with the talent that he needed to perfect his type of place skills. So I'm not gonna go as far. It's similar, but I'm not gonna go and say that it's directly correlated to each other.
I feel you on that. I, would you also possibly compare it to the situation that Jared Goff walked into his first year with the Rams organization and Jeff Fisher was his head coach?
Yes, except I think that Jeff Fisher, me personally, was not a very good head coach. I think that I think Jared Goff actually did what he could, the best that he could with what he had and the coach that he had. I think that, everything is good about going number one, being the number one overall pick, but a lot of that is situational based. You get drafted into bad situations that can turn a great quarterback into a bad quarterback very easily. And I think that Cam Ward is in a situation where he's not in the worst situation, but he's definitely not in the best situation. So I'm looking at it more similar to the Jared Goff situation than the Peyton Manning situation for me.
I won't go as far as saying that Jeff Fisher wasn't a very good head coach. What I'll say is that I believe he overstayed his welcome because those Tennessee Titans teams he had in the late 90s and the early to mid 2000s, they usually were consistent playoff teams. But somewhere along the way, things just kind of sputtered. They made the playoffs a couple of times in the late 2000s, but after that, it just went downhill and it never got right when he went over to the Rams organization. He never took that team to the postseason. But speaking of Mr. Jared Goff, man, we got to break down that Lions and Packers matchup because I got some things to say about what I saw on that field. Y'all stay tuned in for part 2. This is the Why Not Us, Why Not Now podcast. KBX coming at you. We'll be right back.